Alright, I'm gonna try and be brave. So I've just finished seeing a psychologist, and she's written two letters for me. One she wrote back in October, and one earlier this month. And yeah, I thought I'd read some excerpts that have been freaking me out a little bit, and I've been in heaps denial. But on the other hand, I can't pretend that this hasn't been written about me, and it's kind of interesting in its implications. So yeah, I'm gonna do my best to just not care, and maybe that'll make it easier to make the video. Okay, so in the October letter, in terms of like, so it's under a section called Diagnosis, Symptoms, and Treatment, and just the opening paragraph, that I was referred to their service in May 2022 for the assessment and treatment of schizoid personality disorder with dissociative features and a relapse of her major depressive disorder and a background of childhood attachment trauma. And then there's a note about some physical issues. In the next paragraph, it goes through some of my symptoms. I'm not going to read them all out, but stuff like significant sleep disturbance, lack of motivation, and then it gets on to derealization and depersonalization with features of dissociative identity disturbance. Ah, that's a clever word, disturbance, because then I don't have to have the disorder or anything really to do with the disorder. It's just a recognition that things happen in my brain and my sense of self is screwed up. And I was like, yeah, I can go for that. That sounds reasonable for where I'm at. But so I think that was before I saw the dissociation specialist. And then the dissociation specialist wrote a report about me, which I haven't seen and I'm too scared to ask about. And yeah, sent that to both my GP and my psychologist, the one that I'm no longer seeing. But yeah, as I mentioned in a previous video, when I saw my GP most recently, she said the dissociation specialist had been back in touch with some more thoughts. Okay, so clearly the people treating me have been talking about me behind the scenes, and I know I could request reports and stuff if I wanted to, but do I want to? Maybe not. But, before she left, my psychologist, who I was seeing most of last year, she gave me one more letter in case I need to use it for government stuff. And it's similar. It has another diagnosis, symptoms, and treatment section, but I'll read what that says now. It says I was referred to their service in May 2022 for the assessment and treatment of schizoid personality disorder and a relapse of her major depressive disorder on a background of childhood attachment trauma. I understand that she's since also received a possible diagnosis of dissociative identity disorder. No one has told me that this is a thing. I've received a possible diagnosis. Are you kidding? That is what took me by surprise, and that's now where I'm freaking out. Is like, what? How did this? Who was going to tell me that a possible diagnosis of DID? And also, I don't believe it. I mean, I think it depends what school of dissociation you look at, and now I'm like here comes the deer in the headlights kind of thing, because on the one hand, like, now that all this stuff is going on and the dissociation specialist is telling me, yeah, actually, maybe I do have space for you, everything is like in motion, and I think when things get in motion, I do have a tendency to get a bit like, and so, when nothing was happening, I was like, I need some kind of help. But now things are happening and I'm like, no, I don't need any help. It's, yeah, my brain is stupid like that. So that's something I've been thinking about a lot. And I also wonder, like, did I accidentally convince these people that I have a condition that I don't have? But yeah, no, I think I am, like, well down into the whole denial phase again, because I do go through phases of denial. But when I use my logical brain instead of the feeling, like, my brain, so, like, most of the time I think I'm in the emotional state of being, like, just experiencing my life, but then I can also separate that from the logical, mind kind of stuff, and, like, I can hold both of those at the same time and get myself very confused. So, like, emotionally, I'm well and truly in denial, like, yeah, dissociation, all this stuff's bullshit, basically. But in the logical part, I'm like, hang on, there's been a lot of moments where this has been a real sort of, like, frustrating, confusing, distressing kind of thing that happens, and you can't pretend that didn't happen. So yeah, but so I'll accept that I have some kind of dissociation issue, but to say that I have a possible diagnosis of DID, I think is a little bit like, hang on, let's slow down here because there are problems with it. But I realize, yeah, it does depend on the school of thought of dissociation. Because if you look at the DSM, I mean, I haven't looked at it in a while and I haven't read the more detailed whatever is in there, but the last time I looked at DSM, the main distinction between OSDD, other specified dissociative disorder, I believe type 1, the difference between that and like full-on DID is memory loss. And I don't think I have any significant memory loss. Like, yeah, I can lose track of my day but I assume that's because, you know, my life is not structured enough. So, of course, I can't remember things that I did in the morning or things I did yesterday, because what even is my life? I don't think, I mean, surely that's just distraction and things slipping my mind, and here they've got me questioning my own experience, like what if that is enough of a gap in my memory that it would count as a thing. But anyway, so the DSM seems to go for more like that kind of stuff, but I was looking at the ICD-11 and maybe one day I'll go through it and in a bit more detail and how that could possibly apply to me. But I get the impression that the ICD-11 is more focused on structural dissociation, and you can look up the theory of structural dissociation, that people have made a gazillion videos and articles about it. But like, there's a lot of problems with that model, and like the difference between OSDD or partial dissociation as partial dissociative identity disorder is what the ICD-11 calls OSDD-1. The difference between OSDD and DID from the structural dissociation model seems to be like how formed the identities are, and like the type of identities they are. So they have these like emotional parts and apparently normal parts. Oh my god, it just sounds like this whole science fiction mess. And with that model, they, like, instead of having all the dissociative conditions together, which, as I understand it, evidence shows that all the dissociative things are sort of like in the same sphere. Instead of having them together, structural dissociation has like, there's DID, there's OSDD, and also like CPTSD and BPD, borderline personality disorder, which isn't a dissociative condition. It might have dissociation sometimes in some people, but it's not a dissociative condition. And then there's like PTSD. And yeah, okay, there's a link between trauma and dissociation, but like people with PTSD aren't experiencing different personalities unless you like shoehorn in this emotional personality or whatever it is and like say it's a thing, but it's not really a thing. And it, to me, this whole like structural dissociation from my laypersons, oh my god, I've been resting my legs against the desk, they're getting really sore. Sorry, I'm in a sort of defensive posture. Wow, it's funny how once I start talking though, and because I'm like, I'm starting to, instead of the low energy now, I'm like, Anyway, never mind. No, the whole structural dissociation theory makes me think of science fiction, and in particular Scientology. Bear with me here. Okay, so in Scientology, they have this idea that you're basically a thetan. A thetan is like your soul, I guess. And okay, I don't believe in Scientology, but if I could accept the existence of thetans to begin with, then from there I can kind of see some of L. Ron Hubbard's logic. Like, as long as you can accept the original idea, some of the other things actually kind of make sense within their own world. It's like inside a fantasy world. For example, like Star Wars has the Force. If you can accept the Force, then you can accept the other things, like the things that the Force can do. As long as you can just suspend your disbelief and get immersed into that universe. And same thing with Scientology and thetans, and like then you move on to Xenu and body thetans, which apparently me talking about it is going to destroy your minds because none of us are OT3. I'm sorry. Scientology is one of those fascinations for me. I actually found it quite interesting. I used to go in every now and then, just not give them any of my details because I know not to. I'm not that crazy, and I'm not that silly. Anyway, yeah, no, like body thetans. I can see how that could be consistent with his mythology for his worldview. I just don't believe in Thetans, and so I don't believe in Scientology and all that kind of stuff. And I feel kind of the same way about structural dissociation. Like, how do you know that EPs and ANPs are a thing? I mean, like, I guess you can sort of conceptualize things that way, but it's like when you do chemistry in school and they tell you about electron shells and you draw these neat little diagrams and everything makes sense, but then you go to uni and you find out that where the electrons are is more of a probability thing, and, it's not structured quite so nicely into these neat little shells. Like the high school version of the theory, it works for like your basic chemical equations and so on, but it's not really what's going on. And I feel like structural dissociation could be a bit like that. And I have seen, there was one website that had a really good thing laying out some of the criticisms of that theory. But yeah, so like, to get back to the point in terms of like trying to label me with DID, I mean, the DSM-5, I think, is being a bit more conservative and keeping the memory thing as, like, the defining, where is the borderline between these two things. And so I was expecting more that someone might put me into an OSDD category, but you have to also consider like how much of a disorder is it. Okay, yes, I accept my life is very screwed up and I am not a functioning member of society, but is that because of a dissociation thing, or is it because of the depression and schizoid stuff? Like, how much does the dissociation play into it? Like, if anything, quite possibly, if I do this dissociation stuff, maybe that's why I can do the covert schizoid thing, because I'm just, my brain is just doing whatever it does and playing the role it has to play, and I can stay schizoid behind that without really having to be, more of a normal kind of person. I can act normal because my brain is, like, splitting that off in some kind of a weird subconscious way. I don't know. Anyway, so like even OSDD, I'm not sure that would apply to me necessarily. But when you go for more of that structural dissociation ICD-11 thing, where it's like I have one part of my mind that does maybe fit the ANP kind of thing, and the ICD-11 doesn't really say that you have to have these big memory issues, and so by that definition maybe you could shoehorn me into DID, and I'm like, oh my god, why can't they just make up their mind about which way we're gonna do things? But yeah, so that's just something that's had me like kind of on edge for a while now. And then seeing the dissociation specialist and some of the ways that she talks, it is like when you watch DID channels and they have like, because they're so used to the stuff that they're talking about, to them it's normal, but to me it's like, I don't know that I fit into this world. Are we jumping to this kind of like vibe already? I don't know, it's like if you're a fan of Pokemon, for example, and you could just easily talk about Pikachu and whatever, but if someone doesn't know what Pokemon is, they'd be like, hang on, slow down, they have types and how does that work? I don't know if I'm explaining it well. I'm just like, I'm not sure. And then if they try and convince me that I have DID or something similar, like, what are the implications for how I think about myself? I've just been like, do I really want to go down that rabbit hole? Because I spent so much time, there was a period in my life where I humored it that way. And I guess, okay, or sure, like the most productive time in my adult life was when I was on antidepressants, but it was also when I was humoring more of that stuff and trying to get more of it into my real life. And so I'm a bit like, maybe, but, then it disappeared for a while and I thought I'd grown out of it, but of course, no, apparently not. Where am I going with this? No, and then since it came back, I've been like, no, this could be a schizophrenic thing or something, and it's like, you know, it seems childish, and I don't know that it's really helping my life because, yeah, okay, it did help me probably be productive, but that didn't end up so well in the end. So is this really a useful part of my psychology? I don't know. And I've spent so much time like being like, no, I'm just gonna try my best to ignore all that stuff. I'm not always successful, but I try my best to just push it away and try and get on with my life without all that nonsense going on. Oh, and I've really lost my track of mind because up here, can you see this? That's an ant farm, but the ant that I put in there, I think, is just going to die. Yeah. What was I talking about? I'm sorry. Stuff and things to do with dissociation and oh yeah, like, you know, I've spent so much time trying to be like, nah, all that stuff is garbage. Try not to get sucked into it again. And then now they're saying, no, that actually might be your problem. And so then do I just throw out all that effort that I've put into ignoring it and dive back down the rabbit hole and start talking to myself and start splitting? Like, when I saw the dissociation specialist on Monday, she made it sound like to me, I think there's only one part of me that I really feel a sort of disconnection with, and I'm like, that doesn't feel like me. But then there's all the other things in terms of like how my sense of self changes over time, you know, the 3 ways my sense of self is messed up, the over time and the across situations thing. I mean, to me, those are just exaggerations of what people normally experience. I'm not sure that that qualifies as dissociation, but I got the impression, maybe I should have asked her to clarify, but I got the impression that maybe she was going to dive into that as like, maybe these are more people, and I'd be like, but it's not like that. It's just my sort of defensive way of acting how I need to act in a situation. I don't do it on purpose, it just happens, but it's not like I'm a different person. I don't know, like I probably should have asked, but when you're trying to talk to someone about this stuff, it's like, and you know, you only have an hour to address all the different things, and it's, yeah. And there was a moment where she asked me to tell her if I was zoning out or something, or like, you know, getting whatever, and I did zone out when she was explaining to me like her treatment approach or something, and then she asked like, does that make sense? And that's when I was like, hell, and trying to cover for the fact that I just completely zoned out and not listened to anything she said. I realized I should have told her that I had zoned out because this is a chick who wants to know that stuff. But yeah, anyway, so that's the thing, and I'm gonna stop rambling because I think it's just gonna get more off the rails, but yeah. Like, so this is the thing that the government will be sent now, and I'm just like, I mean, does it matter if they put on my record that I have something that I don't? Probably not, because I've messed up my life to this point so well that, you know, who really cares? But I guess what bothers me is the possibility that maybe these guys, these experts, these psychologists, maybe they can see something that I am just in denial of. Like, what if I am in denial that badly? I feel like it feels a bit like when I was dating my ex and he'd gaslight the shit out of me and I would question stuff. It feels a bit like that. Hopefully not in that abusive way. It's just, you know, I don't know if what I'm thinking is right. Like, logically, I feel like this. Oh, actually, no, I don't know. I don't know what I think. Anyway, so before I hurt myself, Scribe, Chronicler, Patreon, t-shirt people. Yeah, no, I'm just so confused because, like, am I being reasonably cautious to question all this stuff, or am I just massively in denial? I genuinely don't know right now. But yeah, dissociation is something that I haven't put a huge amount of effort into understanding for myself. And this is just stuff that's happening. It's too much.